going live today with Chris. I'm just going to invite him. And this is gonna be great. We have so many questions. Hello, Nani. And now we're just waiting for Chris. So this is part of the Raw Vegan Bundle that is until the 11th of May, midnight, with epic books, epic information, courses, recipes, and only for $50. So remember to get the bundle because it's a great tool. It's awesome. You get so many recipes, so much inspiration. And this is what it's about, to feel supported in the raw vegan journey. I'm trying to get, no. I'm going to invite Chris again. So you guys can hear me properly?
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
How you doing?
I'm really good, and you? Can you see me
Well,
properly
I
and hear me
didn't
properly?
a little bit choppy and I missed some, but I can see you now.
Yeah, it's quite a storm outside, so I
Oh
hope
my.
it's not affecting the Wi-Fi.
Well, hopefully it remains stable throughout, and I can't hear it, so at least it's not booming and shaking and flashing for you.
Yeah, I can hear you properly, and I see you. Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah. How are you, Chris? How
I'm
are you
doing pretty
today? Do you have a good morning?
um decent. I've been up for about 2 hours and had a little bit wild dreams last night, which isn't very normal for me, but not too upsetting, just interesting and a little weird. But I'm doing very well. How about you? What time is it there?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I had also very weird dreams last night, but I think that's because
They're very weird. Maybe it's not the place to go into them here, but they were a little weird. Maybe,
yeah,
unless you really want to.
yeah,
Maybe people want to hear the
no,
dream. But
I don't
yeah,
want. I don't
it was
want to know.
weird.
I
No,
had enough
I don't
on
blame
my
you.
own. Yeah, yeah, we just had a little bit like an insane amount of durian yesterday, and I think that was like affect my dreams or something
Hmm.
because it was too much. Yeah.
All those durian dreams, but durian dreams are better probably than cheese dreams. Oh.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't want to. I don't want to know about cheese dreams.
Me neither. Me neither. It's been it feels like another life, and I've heard people talk about that, but and there's actually psychological or physiological reasons for that. But yeah, I had oyster mushrooms yesterday, which I'm not really used to. I don't know if that was what a part of it, but I don't know. Yeah, I had weird dreams last night. I know a couple people who've actually had weird dreams last night. Like actually, everyone I've talked to today said they had weird dreams last night. So kind of interesting.
Yeah, maybe it has to do with the moon. Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, very well could be, isn't it? Or when is it?
Ah, just Monday? Wow. Yeah, it's just yeah, it's pretty close. It's
Yeah.
just 95% on full. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
or maybe it's
just
tomorrow.
in a few
Yeah,
days.
I can't remember, but yeah.
Yeah. But thank you for being here and for being part of this live, because it's a very dear topic to me. And I would like you to start by you introducing yourself so we can go right next to the questions.
Sounds great. Thanks for inviting me on. Always a pleasure to connect with you, and I'm so stoked you're part of the bundle and doing all these lives with others too. It's awesome. So my name is Chris Kendall. I'm from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada, but I live out in Malmo, Sweden now. I've been an athlete since I was a little kid, into skateboarding and fitness and fun and activity and childlike nature, and that started falling apart by the time I was 18, and by 19 I started researching health and nutrition. And by 20, let me think. it would have actually been 23 years. In 2004, I met Dr. Doug Graham and had already been steadily moving towards a raw diet. But after meeting him, I was just like mind blown, and it was so simple after that. And so I've been a raw foodist since then. I'm celebrating 21 years now. And yeah, in 2011-ish, so actually 2010, 11, I started the Raw Advantage. I procrastinate any longer, a little bit of a pattern. You know, I took some time to apply the lifestyle and really feel like I was really confident and competent and could share it with the world. And there was nothing else I ever wanted to do from the day I went raw. I was just like, this is what I'm here for. And so I've been doing that full time for 16 years, doing consults and writing books and going to festivals as a chef or a lecturer or yoga teacher. And I love doing it. It's yeah, now here we are in 2025 and you know, trying to dispel myths that I've learned along the way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's many years being raw. And I remember when I first went raw, you were one of the first people that I found out. So that was a huge, so like all.
Ooh. I hate to say it's cutting up so much I can't actually hear what you're saying, but I'm curious if other people are experiencing, if others are having a issue,
Yeah,
please let us know. But I heard that you said I was one of the first that you found. I'm definitely honored and humbled by that. That's awesome.
yeah. And the topic today will be avoiding extremism for streamlined health. Can you hear me properly? It's just like I'm like the internet, like I'm sometime I can hear you and sometime not. So I don't know if it's something with my connection or yours.
It's the same on my side. I actually have a really strong connection here. It should be really good on this side. The last 10 seconds, like I've heard you completely clear and no interruption at all. But when you were talking, then it was like really chopping up, like before that, last time. But yeah, hopefully the single signal remains strong. And yeah, if anyone else is experiencing that on both of our side or either side, let us know.
Yeah. So yeah, I would like to talk about your experience and the first year of eating raw. And my first question is like, if you fold yourself for extremism the first years of your journey.
Um, I guess it depends on what your view of extremism is. To some people, the way I applied the raw food diet in the beginning would be extreme, but I look at it as ultra conservative, actually the
Yeah.
most kind of simplified way, because I really came into it through hygiene and I was really very strictly fruit based, really mostly fruit. I did eat some vegetables and greens. I didn't quite fully understand the importance of them and the volumes required for long-term robust health. So I probably was under eating vegetables and greens to some extent, but I was still feeling amazing. But the one thing that it again, it isn't necessarily that it was extreme because it wasn't on purpose, but I was subtly under eating. I didn't really understand caloric density. I wasn't eating much sweet fruit. I was mostly eating juicy fruit, which of course can be done for sure if you eat appropriate volumes. But at that time, I didn't really fully understand either the greens importance nor the importance of getting enough and how much that actually took. So I definitely got to a very low body weight. Like after of a raw food diet, I was about, oh gosh, 20 some pounds, or no more than that. I'm 80, so like 30 pounds lighter than I am now and at a very low body weight. And, you know, when I first started, a big part of it was for athletic recovery and to feel better for skateboarding and stuff like that. And before I really got into health, I had like knee pains and issues and stuff like that. And they started to come back after about 6, 7 months of under eating because it's such a low body weight. I don't know if it was, you know, the fluid between the joints or just something else, but I started experiencing some of those issues again early on. But those were the biggest things in my first year that, while not maybe necessarily extreme, some may view it that way, and it was just kind of a lack of knowledge or
Yeah.
fine-tuned knowledge.
Yeah, like when I define extreme, I can tell a little bit what was my own experience. So I did 4 months of juices after just eating raw for maybe 2 months. I
Hmm.
didn't have any transition at all. And then I did 4 months of juices. And during
Yeah.
that time, um, I tried so many different trends. And this
Yeah.
is the first concern also that I have regarding to the trends. It's like, what is your opinion on, for example, coffee enemas or
Mm. Mm.
liver cleanses or dry fasting? Because I'd never
Oh
tried
gosh.
the liver
Yeah.
cleanse, but I did try dry fasting and I did try coffee enemas, and I'm very interested to know what is your opinion about those.
Yeah, that's big. Those are all three of those are really big, and we could take the full time going in depth into each one of them. But in short, I mean, I'll just start with enemas, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'm not really in favor of enemas. I want to make a full dedicated video with even more research and like share all of that that topic. But I mean, just starting with the common sense. I mean, it is an out channel. It's not necessarily really common sense to be pushing water and stuff up in there or different kind of fluids up in there. The bulk of our microbiome is in our colon, and by routinely flushing it out with water, we are damaging the diversity, and we can wash a lot of that out, which lends to less efficient digestion and absorption. Um, Beyond that, it can really be habit forming. I've seen a lot of people, and this is specific to enemas, and I'll get into the coffee part,
Mm.
but it can really be habit forming. And I've seen many, many people who they employ that after they've had a binge, and they use it as a quick fix, and it becomes a yo-yo cycle of like, oh well, it doesn't matter because if I have pizza one night, well then I'll just have an enema the next morning. And again, routinely doing
Yeah.
that. I've seen people say that, like, really, like, a lot. Um, and again, it can really disrupt the microbiome and cause digestive absorption issues. Um, Beyond that, too, if it's not super clean, well, then it can introduce bacteria that you aren't wanting up in there, which can cause other issues. I've consulted and heard of numerous people who did it with too much pressure or too much heat and damaged the lining or damaged the rectum. And actually, and I've consulted a few, and I've talked to other long-term practitioners who have had the same, who cannot go to the bathroom at all anymore without taking an enema because they've actually
Mm.
disrupted their natural rhythm. Who have also damaged the lining and created expanded it too much. Um, so I mean, that's just with enemas. It's kind of funny. Like, I like the school of hard knocks to some degree, where if you're using a short-term therapy to diminish the ramifications of your actions, you're much less likely to learn from them. And
Mm.
while that can sound harsh, it generally takes a few days and just eating properly to find more balance instead of trying to go to a real quick fix and create this yo-yo type tendencies. I don't throw it out with the bathwater. There are some circumstances where it can be useful, but I find those to be the exception rather than the rule. And for the most part, it creates issues. With coffee enemas, I mean, it's used to stimulate bile. It's really used as a stimulation. And I would much rather go the route of increasing the greens, including some bitter foods to increase bile production. And with that, you get only benefits. Whereas with the coffee enemas, again, it's enervating because it's very stimulating. It's disrupting of the microbiome. And it comes more from that allopathic model of, oh, we have an issue. Well, let's try and intelligently fix it and stimulate it. I know better than the body. I'm going to do this. Whereas I'm much more like the nature-driven method, the health model, where we trust the body and we recognize that the body is more intelligent than even the smartest person out here. We can't even fathom how intelligent the body's design is. And it knows how to heal. We just need to give it the right stuff from here and from here. And so I'm not into that stimulation game. I think, again, people become physiologically and psychologically addicted to both enemas and these coffee
Mm.
enemas. Maybe they like a little butt play, that's fine, whatever. But, otherwise it's like it is stimulating. So it can cause people to mistake that stimulation for something good, and just be addicted to that stimulating kind of experience. So I'm not in favor for them. And again, I'm not going to say there's never been a case and there isn't an emergency situation where stuff like that can have its place. But for the absolute utmost, to me, it's a mistaken view on health creation, thinking we can self-direct and force or stimulate into health. And yeah, I'm just not in favor of either of those. Um, Do you want to go in anything more with that, or should we jump on to one of the others you mentioned?
Yeah, I would like to jump into. Someone asked here about colonics before we jump into the next trend.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is your
Yeah.
thought on colonics?
Much the same as with an enema. It's just a more intensive version of that that has more pressure and usually more volume, and again, it's often habit forming, something that people look at as a quick therapy, a quick fix,
Yeah,
rather than really applying a lifestyle. And it comes with even more risks than enemas because there's more volume and more pressure. So it just increases the chances of there being damage to the delicate lining of the colon, more chances of it being habit forming, more chances of disrupting the microbiome and flushing out good beneficial bacteria. And again, that's where we hold most of it, that actually is like huge on the absorption side, so the microbiome replaces itself quite quickly. And just through incorporating more fresh fruits and vegetables, natural prebiotic foods, and eating in a natural, calm and balanced state, all those things I really find and feel and have seen be a more streamlined way to create a lifestyle rather than yo-yo from therapy to back and forth.
yeah. I remember when I was doing this 127 days, and I was kind of posting pictures, and someone approached me, and this person was like, "You have way more inside. You have to start doing enemas." And this
Yeah.
person was doing like 5 coffee enemas a day, and that was
Yeah.
like basically the kind of therapy he recommended to me, to do like 5 coffee enemas and to keep releasing this like um, all this mucus and getting clean, and it never ends, and you have to do it until your eyes get blue and things like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I
Well, I mean
remember
that doesn't need. Sorry, go ahead.
and I remember myself falling into that. Like it took me a while
Mhm.
to come back and to realize, well, this is not helping me. But yeah,
Yeah. I mean, and I didn't even touch on that, and that's a huge aspect of it, like the reasons why people do it, right? I was just
mm,
talking about the ramifications of doing it, but a lot
yeah,
of people do it because, yeah, they think they can't ever be clean
mm,
unless they do that. They can't ever succeed on the lifestyle unless they do
mm,
that, and that they can remove mythical mucoid plaque, which
mm,
is completely mythical. It's a philosophy-based system based on a lack of knowledge and
mm,
is perpetuated sadly very widely from misinformed people, and I know that in my book I have a full chapter on mucoid plaque,
yeah.
and then I also have a full video and blog post which really goes into it, and that's been a topic I've researched for 20 years since I first got in. I feel very blessed that in the beginning the idea of mucoid plaque enemas and colon hydrotherapy just didn't really it didn't hit my common sense. I feel like I've had a very, very good bullshit meter. And it's like it just seemed weird to me. So I researched it more and talked to more people and have been continually researching and talking to more people. And I would be very comfortable putting my entire reputation on the line, saying it's totally mythical. We don't
Mm.
need to do that to clear a mythical mucoid plaque out of our system. The body's self-healing, self-cleaning, self-regulating, and we just need to get out of its way and give it what it needs. That's how biology works.
Yeah, that's a very tough uh, thing to learn, because I remember last year hearing Doc talking about how humans always have seen the body as something medical, and we
Yeah,
keep approaching, even in doing this life, that we keep sometimes approaching the body as something medical, like we have to
yeah.
keep treating it instead of just letting it heal itself. So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a big difference between that medical kind of viewpoint of, that we're smarter than the body and we need to treat it and direct it and tell it what to do and we can fix it, whereas really the nature model and every single other animal and biological being in the world is just supporting its natural processes, just giving it what it requires to be able to do what it needs to do. And I understand that some people get into the mindset of, well, we've gone so far off base, like we've really ruined our system, so we need to do these therapies. And again, I'm not totally throwing everything out with the baby out with the bathwater, but there can be extreme circumstances where doctors are life-saving, and where there can be interventions that are life-saving, but those are the exception, not the norm. And that idea that like everyone should be doing this and you're not clean enough unless you do that. To me, it comes from just a misconception and a fear-based kind of thinking, and does a lot more disservice than help.
Yeah. And the next question that I have is like something that I've been seeing becoming more and more popular, especially among females, is dry fasting. And
Yeah.
to me, I try myself because I love trying things also to experiment and see how it works. I did 2 days and it was a horrible experience.
Mm-hmm.
Some people sometimes say to me, "Oh, you didn't meditate enough to do the dry fasting and to have a profound experience, or you didn't breathe enough," things like that. And I want to know your experience about it.
Yeah, I've actually tried it for, I think it was 2 or 3 days myself during a water fast at one point, and it wasn't, I didn't have a hard time, to be honest. And I have friends who employ it quite a bit, and they speak so highly of it, and speak of heat running through their body and expansive thoughts and feelings, and this really comes back to, again, it being stimulatory. We're putting our body in an extreme situation that taxes our system and makes it harder on our organs of elimination. And there's a biological truth too that we need enough hydration. We need a high enough level of hydration to detoxify efficiently on a cellular level. And when cells get dehydrated, they shrink up and they can't effectively get rid of their wastes anymore. So we actually get backed up on a cellular level, and it's just it really goes against everything we know about how the body works in terms of efficient, streamlined detoxification. And sure, you can get more intense symptoms, but that's not necessarily a good thing. Like people are looking for intense symptoms, or they're looking for that really stimulatory high, like similar to being high, and they mistaken that euphoria from cortisol spiking and from the hormones going out of whack, and the body being stressed out and heating up, running a slight fever because it's, getting clogged as a positive, and this couldn't be further from the truth. And sadly, we've seen some people in the movement die because of this kind of advice. And whether it was directly 100% just because of that or because of the rest of their lifestyle, that was, I think, unarguably a part of it, and, even through autopsies, we've seen people who repeatedly dry fast having scarred kidneys, and it's just really hard on the organs of elimination. And I can't recommend dry fasting in any way, shape, or form. I mean, if you have a day with little less hydration, whatever. But I've seen people talking about 40-day dry fasts, and without the added context that they're also taking water enemas at the same time. They don't even mention the water enemas, but, oh, I did a 40-day dry fast. And that is so inaccurate and insincere and dangerous to say, because we absorb water through the colon. So if you're taking water enemas, you're just drinking through your butt, so you're not doing a dry fast if you're doing that. And again, even still, I would not recommend anyone do a dry fast of days or weeks at all. It's a sure chance to really harm your body and more likely cause issues in the long term.
Yeah, and I know that also some people promote dry fasting in order to get the kidneys to filter. So what do you think about that?
Well, I recently talked a bit about kidney filtration, and that's another one that I really want to go really in depth with a science-based video, and even some showing, that you can just turn that on and off. But I mean, you said it right there. If you're dehydrated, you start to see sediment in your urine, and that's not showing that your kidneys are now filtering. It's showing that those crystals are forming because they don't have enough hydration to be dilute in your urine, and so whether that's not drinking water and only eating fruit, which you're not going to be nearly as hydrated if you're just eating especially sweet fruit and not drinking water, not eating adequate amounts of non-sweet fruit like cucumbers, tomatoes, all those kind of good things. And so our kidneys are always filtering. If they aren't, we're dead. And yeah, sure, you can turn up and down the efficiency to some degree if you're not overburdening yourself. But that's really not what we're talking about. When we're talking about a fresh fruit and based lifestyle and drinking water, you're facilitating your kidneys, you're improving it. So It's really a misconception,
Mm.
and again, kind of built off of just misinformed people who believe in the stimulation or just believe in what they read and think that, oh my God, well, I feel so good. Like I feel so, high almost, and again, it's just that
Mm.
stimulatory nature and the hormone spikes that you feel, which is putting your body in a crisis mode, right? So it's it's another just big misconception. And, like I said, it is very common. And you're talking about dry fasting or not drinking water and seeing stuff. Well, yeah, that's not because your kidneys are now magically filtering better. As they're stressed and they're dehydrated, and you're seeing those crystals that otherwise just wouldn't be there if you were well hydrated. But the content is still there. Like the same stuff's coming out. It's just when you're dehydrated and there's low water ratio in your urine, it's darker and smellier, then you're going to see stuff that otherwise would be dilute.
Yeah, and another, this make me think about another question. Something that I also have seen with other raw vegan is when I ask them, "Do you drink water?" And it's like, "No, I haven't had water in 14 years." Almost like feeling proud about on having water in 14 years. I just get my water from fruits and vegetables, and
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, it feels like when people stop drinking water, they lose touch with the thirst.
Yeah.
I don't know what you feel about that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, it's just a misconception on biology, and it's a philosophy-based kind of approach that, again, is based on misconceptions. Even primates, they do drink water. Like there are very, very few examples of animals that don't drink water or very infrequently drink water, and they're not anywhere near to our physiology and anatomy. So, I mean, the nature example isn't there. Um, a lot of a lot of people just don't recognize as well that fruit with its sugar content in it requires water for the body to metabolize, right? So you could be eating really juicy fruit and think, wow, it's so hydrating, but it's not as hydrating as water because every gram of sugar needs roughly 7 grams of water to be able to metabolize and turn it into muscle glycogen and put it in the body. And, so Dr. Graham once gave me the example. You could eat an extremely sweet watermelon, like sweet of the sweetest, right? And it can actually be just keeping your hydration level the same because the water that's in it is required to metabolize the sugars, in the fruit itself, right? So that's where it is important, to also eat non-sweet fruits and stuff like that. So yeah, you can get by, like you can survive without drinking water, and you can do better than most people on most diets for a period of time if you're really looking at, making sure you're eating a lot of non-sweet fruits, tomatoes, cucumbers, you're eating lettuces and stuff that again are non-sweet, so they don't require the water for the sugar metabolism. You're drinking lots of coconut water. But again, this is kind of gets into that like misconception that I hear people say, like dry fasting, but they're doing water enemas. Well, I don't drink water, but I drink 8 coconuts a day, and it's like, well, yeah,
Yeah,
that's essentially water, like sure
yeah.
you can say with the nuance that it's not technically water. And yeah, you could do well if you're doing a lot of that. But the attitude that is bad to drink water or you're better than if you don't drink water and that water and somehow is bad for you is a vast misconception. And
Mm.
being well hydrated, I mean, for example, like if you've went out running and you're like depleting muscle glycogen and you're slightly dehydrated and you're like, oh well, I don't need water, I'm just going to eat orange juice. Well, again, you're going to be less hydrated. Your body's going to be less efficient at uptaking that glucose and delivering it to your cells. Every process in your body is going to be less efficient if you use that juice to hydrate, as opposed to when you're thirsty, you drink water, and then after you've satiated your need for thirst, you eat that orange juice. It's going to make it a lot easier on your body in every single way, make digestion and assimilation and detoxification more efficient. So it's just negative after negative to think that we don't need any water and just rely on fruit instead. Again, with the caveat that if you drank the coconut water, sure, that's another option, but it's kind of funny. It's another misconception that coconut water is more hydrating than water. There's actually been tests done on this, and it's not more hydrating than water. And we're water-based beings, and you can clean your water, right? You can have water that is distilled or reverse osmosis or quality spring water, and these are all great choices, right? So It's a sad misconception that's out there that causes a lot of people to be slightly dehydrated and not thriving at the level where they could be.
Yeah, do you drink any special water, like reverse osmosis or
I mean, I have a
distilled water?
really high quality water filter here called Purity. I mostly actually use this one at night. Like I have it by my bed and wake up in the morning and drink that. But the largest amount of water that I personally drink is either reverse osmosis or distilled. That's what I have in my house here is distilled. My parents' house in Canada, I actually got them to get reverse osmosis taps, you know. But yeah, that's what I normally do. I know other people who really prefer spring. It's great too, especially if it's from a good source that's been tested and there's no bacteria or like lots of heavy minerals in it. But you know, I like distilled myself. For me, it feels the best in my system. I like the taste of it the best. You know, it's the closest to like really clean, pure rainwater, for example, which I like. You know, so that's mostly what I do. How about you?
Yeah, I drink distilled water myself.
Hmm.
Is what I like the most. But
Hmm.
when I don't have distilled water, then reverse osmosis water. And if I don't
Yeah,
have that, then I drink spring water. I
yeah,
do find sometimes very challenging to drink the water that they give you on airplanes because
yeah,
I notice the difference. Like it's so hard. It's like oh, like,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah. It's
I know I know that I have to drink water on airplanes, and I try to travel with cucumbers and hydrate myself as much as possible.
yeah. Yeah. Someone's asking about Kangen water, which I can talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the dead water fallacy that like water is dead and you need alive water. This again is just another misconception. And Kangen water, for example, it's an alkaline water machine. I can't get behind that. I mean, it was mostly popularized due to its affiliate marketing, you know, like kind of pyramid kind of affiliate marketing, because the machine itself is actually fairly cheap, but if you sell it, you get a lot of money selling it, you know,
Mm.
and that's a, you know, and I definitely understand too that the people selling it, they believe in it, right? They're sold on the information about it. Um, but you know, routinely drinking alkaline water can disrupt the pH of your stomach and actually make
Yes.
you less efficient at digesting proteins, and you know it lessens your hydrochloric acid content. It's not something that I can promote. People can have good effects on it, especially if they they normally are eating more acid forming foods, you know, because it offers some alkalinity that they're not getting, but a much more rational approach that it only again brings benefits instead of like, you know, drawbacks and side effects is to get your mineralization and your alkalinity from fruits and vegetables. You know, radical thought, you know, eat your fruits and vegetables and you'll get health, right? So, yeah, I'm not in alignment with drinking that. I've had a friend who had it, and yeah, sure, I'll drink a glass of it, you know, but I'm by no means supportive of drinking that every single day, day in and day out. That money is much more well spent on produce and or maybe a distiller or you know, reverse osmosis machine.
Yeah, I had that experience lately. I had 1 week of drinking pure alkaline water, and out of nowhere, I started getting like a skin rash, and then I was sneezing like constantly for like a whole day, like 2 days, and then as soon as I stopped drinking that water, I, I, I don't know, I stopped feeling that discomfort,
Yeah,
and it made me conclude, oh, it's the water. It was like 10, I think 10 pH scale, so it was very alkaline.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I have seen people who routinely drink that and have ended up with digestive
Mm.
issues, who, you know, ended up having dysbiosis in their gut because, you know, without that level of hydrochloric acid, you're more prone to pathogenic bacteria proliferating and causing issues, possibly connected to things like SIBO and other, you know, other bacterial issues. So, yeah, it's just great marketing, great way to fire people up to be really wanting to market it and sell it, you know, but based off misconception and especially in the context of, you know, a robust raw food diet is absolutely unnecessary and can be harmful and detrimental.
Yeah. And now I would like to ask you about the next trend, which is liver cleanses,
Oh yeah, yeah,
drinking
yeah,
drinking oil and getting all these
yeah.
stones.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this goes right back to that kind of idea that we need to self-direct and stimulate
Mm,
and, all that stuff, not really trusting the body, not really trusting Mother Nature or God's design. To me, it's just another fallacy, the clever fallacy of just thinking more clever, and it's been really debunked thoroughly by analyzing stones that come out, and what are they? They're made up of the oils,
mm,
it's just so clearly false information, and it's not easy on the body. I mean, we're talking about recommending an oil-free diet because oils are like some of the most processed foods out there, stripped of all the fiber, all the water, all the minerals. There's very little between pure fat in them. That's basically it, pure fat, and you know some antioxidants. If it's cold pressed XYZ, right? But we can get all of that from our food. We can support our livers in their natural processes through a natural diet, through being well hydrated. And consuming oil is the opposite of that. It stresses the system out and causes the formation of those soapy stones, and they're not the same thing as actual kidney stones. And it's again, it's just a mistaken belief that can be very clearly debunked by looking into what exactly happens in the body, despite people making claims because they saw something come out. It's similar to that mucoid plaque. Well, I saw something come out, so it's true, and I felt better after because I was so stimulated.
mm.
Like I put my body in an emergency situation, and wow, I felt amazing for a little bit. And it's like, I'm sorry, that's just again another misconception from. It's so funny, right? It's like they say sometimes having a little information is more dangerous than having a lot or having none at all, and that's kind of that case. It's like you get that little bit of information, it sounds fantastic, and it's like, wow, a short-term quick fix. That's exactly what I need. I don't want to go into a full-on lifestyle. I just want a quick fix, and so people are drawn into it and they see something and then they spout it out and like create a buzz and everyone talks about it, and that's how myths are maintained, but having enough information and really digging deep into it and looking at it with a wider viewpoint that isn't just philosophical and fantastic, can really clearly debunk that and, make it a lot easier to want to apply lifestyle rather than go towards just quick fixes.
And what do you think about this approach that less is better? Like, for example, having OMAD and making it posting on Instagram. Oh, I do OMAD and I exercise at the same time and I feel great and I never drink water and
Yeah.
basically doing nothing.
Well, I'll start off by just the energy you had behind that, which I do see around it. And I'm not going to say that it's always that way,
Mm,
because again, sometimes people are just mistaken because they hear something, they do something and they get some kind of effect from it, whether that's a stimulatory effect or they just intellectually are like, I'm busy. I don't want to spend much time doing X, Y, or Z. I
mm,
just want that quick fix. And this is what really does it. Um, but in a lot of cases, it's just, again, it's just based off misconception, and we'll start with OMAD. I mean, the idea of just eating one meal a day, that's what
mm,
OMAD means, and so a lot of times people just like, oh, well, this is, putting me in a longer non-eating window. And,
mm,
I've heard about the hormones produced and, this and this and that. And to me, it's a solution to a improper, or maybe not improper, it's like a solution to our non-species specific diet to some degree, and it's not a good solution even though. But it's like, if you're eating foods that were not really designed for, and they're super high in calorie, and you're suffering from the ramifications of eating those foods routinely by squishing them all into one meal, well, you feel like you're experiencing the negatives of that less often because you're giving your body a longer
mm,
window to deal with it, right? You're just forcing it all into one meal. And people can get their calories from one meal more easily if they're looking at, cooked foods and high fat foods and foods that aren't really ideal. Like a lot of people on an OMAD based diet, they aren't necessarily eating the best foods. They're eating really heavy foods, and
mm.
that makes it more plausible with some benefits, but also all the same setbacks and drawbacks of eating that way in the first place. So there's that aspect of it. But then people carry that over into a raw food diet and think, well, that makes sense. That's what we should do. Well, first off, the number one issue people have troubles on a raw food diet is under eating, and trying to shove all of your food into one meal when we're talking about high fiber, high water content foods is a recipe for disaster. You're going to be overburdening your digestive system, neglecting food timing and or digestive chemistry, just really forcing and for the absolute most part, it's going to lead most people to under consuming calories and or overburdening their digestive system, effectively getting less from more. Like they're actually getting less from their food while they're eating more volume because it's just not as efficient digestion nor absorption. So I can't get behind OMAD at all, especially on a raw food diet. I don't think it's a sound approach any way you cut it. There isn't the example in nature. We don't see our primates. We're not lions. I mean, lions, yeah, they eat a whole bunch of food at once and then they don't eat for a long period of time. There are examples of that in nature, but they're typically carnivorous and they have a way longer sleep cycle. They then need to sleep for like 20 hours after they eat, because it's so digestive intense, right? So we're not made like that. That's not how our system is designed, we're better off having meals that are appropriate and having enough of them throughout the day to get enough. And going into the less is more kind of view. I mean, it stems originally just from a misconception of studies and the way that they're promoted, because people base that basically off of caloric restriction studies. And when you hear that, you think, well, that just means that, you're eating less than you need, and that's what's good. You should eat less. Like, don't eat enough, like. But really, again, that kind of comes back first to mainstream diets, people eating foods we're not really physiologically and biologically adapted to. And when you're doing that, you're driven to overeat because you're searching for volume, you're searching for nutrition. And, it's predictable because you see people get overweight and develop degenerative diseases from eating diets that were not really designed for. So restricting those types of diets to actually get what is required. That's the missing piece there. People think that restrictive eating, or sorry, that this concept means that they're not getting enough calories, like they're actually eating less calories than their body needs. But it's more about caloric optimization, and those studies are really based on getting enough of what they need and not too much of those not really optimal food choices. And again, carrying that over. A lot of people just take information they hear from mainstream studies or mainstream diets and then think, oh, well, that's apples to apples. Let's just carry that over into the raw food diet. And that means that it's better if you eat less on a raw food diet. But again, less is never more. Like if we don't get enough calories, if we don't get enough minerals, if we don't get enough protein, if we don't get enough carbohydrate, we're not going to thrive, especially in the long term. And sure, people can get away with it for a period of time. And there may even be cycles in your athleticism or in your life where you eat a little bit less. Yeah. Like our needs aren't static. People like to put things in boxes and go, every day you need 2,500 calories and you need this much protein. It's not like that. It's like, there are some days you're more active physically, mentally, emotionally, and those days you're going to likely require more, whether it's that day or the day after to recover from it. So there is a little bit of a wave pattern here. But the idea that less is more is, again, just a logical fallacy that doesn't ring true. Whether we're looking at nature, whether we're looking at physiology and anatomy, whether we're looking at the science of those studies, it's really, again, really based on a misconception. And again, going back to that number one reason people have an issue on the raw food diet, not eating enough calories, just not eating enough food, or you could couple that on not eating enough greens. Um, it's a recipe for disaster, and that leads people to way more harsh cravings, even more intensive detox past the point that is really optimal and streamlined and easy on the physical, mental, emotional body, and leads to more yo-yo type behavior where they're restricting because they think it makes them better and more pure, and then all of a sudden binging on high-fat foods or cooked foods and back and forth mentally and emotionally. And it's, again, I've just seen it way too often to be less than clear about it in this format.
Yeah. And what is your position on people that are trying to pursue Britarianism, like from
I like
OMAD
that
to
you mentioned
completely?
trying to pursue it,
Yeah.
like having that idea in your mind of less is more, and I'll be more spiritual, or I'll be better if I don't eat, and that's our destiny. We need to go that way, so I'm going to progressively eat less. And oh, greens slow down detox, so I'll stop eating greens and I'm just going to eat fruit. And oh gosh, the fruit's kind of too heavy, so I spit out the pulp. Like I've met people who do that. They chew fruit and they spit out the pulp because they think that's better, or
Mm,
now I'm going to go juicearian. I'm just drinking juice. That's it. I
mm,
feel so great, stimulated. I feel so great just drinking juice, and so obviously the next step is to eat less and become a breatharian. I mean,
mm.
amazingly, I didn't know it before, but there's breatharian retreats out there, where of
Yeah.
course they serve food, but people are on a pedestal because they don't eat. And with a lot of these things, and what I wanted to mention when I said the energy behind how you delivered that, a lot of these things actually have ego behind them, and
Mm,
like even the Buddha, recommends watching out for the ego trap of spiritual pursuit,
mm,
so whether we're talking about spiritual pursuit and thinking that that makes you better or separates you from someone, well, you're missing the whole freaking point,
mm,
if we're talking about diet purity and thinking that that makes us better, or again is automatically make us more spiritual, again we're missing the point, and it's a misconception, and it's its own trap, so um I cannot in any way shape or form recommend anyone go out with the idea I'm going to eat less and become a breatharian because that's better. I mean, we're physical beings on a physical plane, and I won't dismiss it as absolutely impossible and that there's no way in hell that's ever going to happen. Um, I'm very skeptical. I think we're in physicality and we're bound by physical laws and rules unless perhaps you truly are Neo and you break free and you're completely enlightened and you just like, but most of us aren't there,
mm.
most of us aren't there. And
Yeah.
I think it's a vast misconception to try to go there. I mean,
Mm,
honoring the body and giving it what it requires is
mm,
the absolute most rational, sound way of supporting ourselves to get to the highest heights of health and vibrancy. The example is out there in nature, and I really favor a balanced approach that is in gratitude for the physicality we have, for the amazing gifts we have amongst us to nourish ourselves. Mother Nature's love made manifest. All of the pranas put together to form fruits and vegetables, and it's sadly again it can be ego, or it can often also be from a place of fear, or what's another way to put it? Fear or non-acceptance of self. Like we can feel like we're not enough, so I'm not going to feed myself. I don't deserve
mm,
it. Or we can feel like, oh, well, like I don't want to eat because it's just inconvenient. I'd rather not eat. And it's like, sorry, that's not a really good reason to not eat. And again, these tendencies that we've all talked about, all the ones we've talked about, and with the breatharian view, I've seen far too many people again just slowly start to disappear. And it's kind of funny. I'll just tell a brief story too, because when I first went raw, when I was in school in Vancouver at the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition, um, my teacher, she was an Ayurvedist, and I told her I went raw vegan, and she's like, "Well, that's great, like fruits and vegetables are cleansing foods, like but they're not building foods. You need cooked foods and animal foods to build. So if you continue on this raw vegan diet, you're going to eventually disappear and die. Like she just straight up told me that, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't really think that's true. And I mean, I contacted her years later and shared like more well-rounded info on it, and she didn't want to hear it. She just was like, stop emailing me. But yeah, if you're eating too little of raw foods, which these are the most satiating foods, or sorry, they're not, it's not that they're the most, they are the most satiating in terms of volume and nutrition, but it makes, because of that, because they're so high volume and because they're so nutritious, it's easy to slightly undereat. And again, that plays back into the number one reason people fall off is not eating enough calories. You could kind of in the running there is also just lack of information or misinformation, right? So it's like misinformation, lack of information, and not eating enough spells disaster. And so she has seen people who tried to do a raw food diet and didn't eat enough. And so she made the conclusion that all raw food diets are bad and you're going to disappear because you don't get enough. But that's why we really are showcasing here, and that's part of the reason why I put out these myths, and I really am a huge advocate of abundance. I really think it's a disservice to plant in the people's mind that anything less than abundance is bad, like that you want to be slowly eating less and going to that direction of breatharianism, and that you're better than and more pure, and it's just amazing if you don't have to eat food anymore, because we're physical beings, and time again it's shown to cause major issues. And again, that's another one where sadly usually it seems to be like dry fasting and breatharianism and fruitarianism and these kind of extremes that we're talking about that lead people down a spiral to really scary low body weight, to spiking cortisol, to just way too much stress, to poor digestion, to hair and skin issues, and sadly, eventually death. There definitely have been people who've died because of multiple of these things all put together, which kind of go into that same extreme and fantastical kind of viewpoint that people are just drawn to when they're very desperate.
Yeah, I have seen like those type, which is like going from raw foods and doing juice feasting, and they're doing dry fasting and focusing on getting rid of mucus and over cleansing, and then go back to meat.
Yeah,
It's something that I have
yeah,
seen many times, and I do remember myself, when I did 127 days just drinking juices, and then from one day to another, I needed to start eating. I was
yeah,
like, well, I don't know what to eat now.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. And
so
it's psychologically addicting because for numerous reasons, because
yeah,
one, just juices, especially fruit juices, they are stimulating, the
mm,
fibers there in a reason to slow the absorption, and also for the absorption of certain nutrients to come through at different parts of the digestive tract, not just in the stomach. But when you remove all the fiber, it's absorbing extremely fast in the stomach, and so is stimulatory for that reason, and that's not a good thing. People again mistake stimulation for it being a good thing, just like people like coffee, like they think it's good because they get that buzz, but it's enervating. Things that are stimulating are enervating, right? And also because when people just drink juices for a prolonged period of time, well, yeah, they have less blood flow going to digestion, so they have more energy to feel like, like they feel like they're never-ending energy and like buzzing around like an Energizer bunny. But again, a lot of that is stimulation and just less blood flow going to digestion. And what that can lead to is people really feeling like if they don't feel that same sense of lightness, if they don't feel that same kind of sense of um, stimulation, that is bad. So, I've definitely coached a lot of people and talked to a lot of people who are like, I just prefer juices because I prefer the way I feel, and they don't want to eat, foods with fiber in them, and they think that it's worse to have foods with fiber in them. And their digestion suffers, because they have a lower hydrochloric acid content in their stomach. So again, they don't digest proteins and amino acids as well. So when they eat greens or they eat a big salad, they feel kind of bloaty and full and not good. So they take that as a message that, yeah, those foods actually aren't good for me, without really realizing it's just because of their microbial balance and their microbiome not suited anymore because they have neglected and restricted beneficial fibers and prebiotic foods that also raise the hydrochloric acid in the stomach to be able to digest food properly. And so it is just a sad reality that is self-confirming for so many, and people will stomp their feet and say, but my experience rings true and it reigns
mm,
supreme. And it's like, well, let's consider a little bit more than just your experience. Like, yeah, honor your experience, but there are things you can do where you experience things that are self-confirming, but aren't supported by biology, physiology, or the wider breadth of knowledge and experience of thousands and thousands of people, and people consulting people and long-term results, right? So it's just, it's a sad thing to see. I just gotta say, it's a sad thing to see.
yeah. And this takes me to the next question, which is, are all cooked food equal as toxic?
Mm.
Like steamed broccoli, is that the same as eating chimichangas, like you say the other day?
Yeah, yeah. I love the word chimichangas. Yeah. I just love saying chimichanga or fajita. But but yeah, that's a prevalent myth. I mean, I remember one of the first books I read, Nature's First Law, which was word for word plagiarized. The last sentence of every chapter was cooked food is poison. Cooked food is poison. Just driving that home. Cooked food is poison, and Yeah, again, it comes back to nuance, like if we're talking about deep fried animal foods and, like just deep fried Snickers bars and stuff, well, yeah, there are toxic realities around that, whether you want to call that poison or not, that's up to you. There's definite detriment and toxic realities to it. But assuming that all cooked foods equals poison and all cooked foods equals you're creating more mucoid plaque and which again doesn't exist, and all cooked foods have toxins formed, that's a misconception, and people again they like boxes, they like black and white thoughts, they like just super easy, this is how it is. Sorry, that's just not the case. And when we're talking about wet heat, like steaming, boiling, using a pressure cooker, those things, they don't form toxins. Like they actually don't form foodborne toxins. We don't have acrylamide forming. We don't have POHs. Oh gosh, I'm mistaking that, but we don't have those toxins being formed with
Mm.
simple wet heat, low temperature cooking. So yeah, whether we're talking about steamed or boiled broccoli or cauliflower, carrots, or leafy greens or anything like that, or potatoes or stuff like that, yeah, they're not toxic. They require a larger digestive burden in many cases than simple raw foods,
Mm.
especially fruits and tender greens. So it takes more blood flow. They're going to digest a little bit slower, so they may feel a little bit heavier in the system. And yeah, some heat sensitive nutrition, especially heat sensitive vitamins, can be diminished, so it's not better than raw foods, but there are certain foods that would be better cooked. For example, like let's say you lived in a situation where you had unlimited sweet potatoes, like they're free and they're unlimited, and you're not totally attached to, I must be 100% raw, right?
Mm.
You're better off steaming or boiling those sweet potatoes to eat them for your caloric needs rather than being like, well, I must be raw, so I'm just going to eat raw sweet potatoes all day, and a very simple view about it too. And I'm not saying you can't have some raw sweet potato. If you like raw sweet potato, go for it. It's not super tasty or digestive, but it does have some nutrition in it, and in smaller amounts, you can definitely do it, right? But I like what Dr. Graham said about this at one point. He told me that oh gosh, I of course it just left me. Um, oh no, okay, there we go. He told me, the foods that we need to cook are just not our first tier foods. Like these are
Mm.
fallback foods. When we're talking about foods that you can eat as a meal by themselves, enjoy it in its whole natural raw state without seasoning it and saucing it all up, and experience good digestion and elimination. These are our first tier foods. This is what our physiology is designed for. If,
Mm.
if you need to alter it massively, it's not really a first tier food. And again, that doesn't mean that it's bad, it's not a first tier food, and it's probably not the best to try and make up our diet from those foods. If we concentrate on the foods we're physiologically and biologically adapted to, I mean, that's what really rings true as fruits being our number one calorie source, because it's predictably easier to get our calories from fruit, to enjoy it, and to experience great digestion and to get the symphony of nutrition that we require, compared to trying to get all of our calories, say, from vegetables. If you try and get all your calories from raw or even cooked, say, broccoli and greens specifically, we won't go necessarily into tubers and really complex carbohydrates that have more calories. Let's just stick to the lower calorie greens and broccoli and stuff like that. You're going to be eating so much, you're going to be disrupting your digestion, especially if you're trying to eat those all raw. Like I've done the math, it's like I can get all my calories from 8 pounds of bananas, you know, but I need to be eating closer to like 30 pounds of romaine lettuce
Mm.
to get my calories, and I don't know about you, but have you ever tried to eat a pound of romaine lettuce? Like I like it. I'll eat 2 pounds in a sitting at times, but that's quite a lot.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of lettuce to eat 2 pounds of lettuce, and to eat 32 in a day. Maybe if you just sat and you forced it and you ate all day, you could do it, but it's not optimal. It's not optimal. I know I got a little off topic there, but hopefully it paints a full picture.
Yeah. I do have like a few questions left, but it's already 1 hour. So I don't know if
Has
I
it been an
can.
hour? I
Yes,
just looked up.
like
I thought it was a half hour. Oh my gosh, I apologize. You
yeah,
can rapid fire a few of them, and I can give shorter answers if you like, or we could talk another time on them if you prefer.
yeah. I would like to ask, what is your view on people that say, and I have seen this a lot in females, like, oh, because I eat fruit based or raw vegan, I don't have to exercise.
Hmm.
I,
Very, very. I'll just say very straight up. It's misguided, misinformed. Yeah, you're gonna feel better because it's more aligned with our anatomy and physiology again. It's the best foods for us. But in order to truly thrive, we need to be active. You know, every single species is active to relative to their design, you know, and we're a pretty active species. We'd be climbing trees and foraging and running around to procure our food if we were out in nature. Um, you know, when we're eating this way, we have a lower body weight. And
mm,
if we have a low body weight and we don't do some type of resistance training or don't do some kind of exercise that creates demand on our muscles and our skeleton, well, we can get osteoporotic and we can have low bone density, which is not advantageous. Um, and very simply put, too, because we're designed to be active and to be fit, if we're not creating that demand, if we're not burning those extra calories and creating a demand for more total food, we're not getting enough. We won't be getting enough protein. We won't be getting enough minerals. We won't be getting enough vitamins to be optimally healthy. So,
mm,
yeah, maybe you can survive without it, but you're not going to be thriving. And it's a misconception to think that there's, you know, no need to exercise because, you know, you eat a raw food diet. Uh, Everyone would be brought numerous advantages and benefits by including exercise. And that doesn't mean killing yourself with exercise either, you know, like it's all about balance. Like, and with a lot of these very simple, common sense, nature derived principles, it comes back to enjoyment. Like, yeah, like move and play and have fun and pick the activities you enjoy and do it as much as you can enjoy, but also give yourself time to enjoy leisure and recovery and you know all those good things. And it's the same with food. It's like eat all you could enjoy. This is a diet of abundance. It doesn't need to be restrictive, and you don't need to force it past enjoyment. Like you hate it. Like I've done that before, eating bananas to the point where I was like, oh, gross. But I'm like, oh, I better get the calories and forcing them in. And it doesn't need to be like that, you know. Like
yeah,
it really can be a diet of self-directed enjoyment. There is, of course, you know, dependent upon where someone's coming from and you know their mental emotional state, there can be fine tuning and nuance there, right? Of course, but yeah, that's just a misconception.
yeah. And if I'm doing this lifestyle perfectly, mm, and and I'm doing everything perfectly, but then I do start feeling, for example, some B12 deficiencies or magnesium deficiencies, or I'm not eating enough um, uh, greens, for example. What is your view on supplementation? Because that's the other thing that I see sometimes, which is like, oh, I don't need anything because I'm doing everything perfect.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first coming back to what is perfect, you know,
Mm.
like people like to put things in a box and like if I'm eating X, Y, and Z, then perfect, you know, and it's like
Yeah.
I don't look at perfection like that, you know, and that's a full topic, but I really don't look at perfection like that. To me, perfection's a dance. It's always evolving. It's always changing. It's always growing. You know, it's like to me, perfection's in the process. It's not an end state. So, you know, with diet, you know, if we think I got it perfect because I'm eating X, Y, and Z every day and that's perfect, it's like, well, then you're neglecting nature's natural rhythms and, you know, variety and, you know, including you know all the foods and the colors of the rainbow and enjoying the seasonality that's out there which is beautiful and amazing and assures nutrient diversity and microbial diversity in our GI tract and you know if we just eat the same foods day in and out because we think that's the perfect foods you know we're not going to be thriving at the same level as if we include variety over the week month and year with the seasons, right? So I just wanted to start with that. um, but specifically going into supplementation, that's another kind of ego trap, you know, the thought that you're better than if you don't supplement and that all forms of supplementation are bad and evil and every supplement that's ever been created is by a lab and not well-meaning people. I've heard conspiracies in every single way about this kind of stuff, right? And while I for sure would rather get enough from my food and from, environmental factors like getting enough sunshine and, all that good stuff, um, there definitely can be a time and place for supplementation, and it can be, if not life saving, it can be life changing. Like I've met far too many people, myself included. I came from a hygienic background that really had some ego and pride around not supplementing and thinking it made me better and this and that. And then I got hit by a rude awakening when I was deficient, clinically deficient in B12 and symptomatic and having a really hard time with it. And I had to come to peace with that and start supplementing. And I mean, B12 is a big one, that's a really big one. Some people find vitamin D. In some cases, people have found zinc or iodine. And again, for the most part, yeah, these are things that with good information and guidance, you can come back into balance with a whole food approach. But in some cases, supplementation can be really beneficial to bring someone right back to baseline really quickly. I've found that pretty far and few between, especially if somebody is looking at this in the way that we've talked about, a well-balanced, abundant approach. But if somebody is really deficient because they have went to the extreme in many ways, way past common sense levels, well, yeah, then there can be a time and place for these things, right? And it's not all created equal. It doesn't make one bad. It doesn't make one worse. It just is the natural conclusion of some choices that weren't really serving your overall health, right? So, but again, in the context of someone who thinks that they're doing it perfectly, that's where getting some guidance and fine tuning and looking at what they're actually doing and seeing if there's holes in their diet or their lifestyle. Because people like to put everything on diet and think that it's just get diet perfect and then everything's perfect. And it's like, I'm sorry, it's not that way, because you could be eating the perfect diet but be a stress case and not sleeping well and judging everyone around you and depleting your B vitamins and a whole bunch of other things and spiking your hormones and causing a whole number of issues, right? So it's not just food, it's a whole picture and there's a lot of nuance there.
Yeah, you say something very interesting about judging everybody around.
Yeah, God.
Mem- mem- Meanwhile, being in this, being very extremist, like I remember being myself there, like having all this fasting and dry fasting and juicing, and then I will go outside and just look at people like, oh, these people are like a bunch of idiots, because
Yeah.
I was like constantly just like restricted and being unhappy, So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it is such a shift to go from that to judgment and looking down on other people to come to a place of such gratitude for what you found and the changes it makes in your body
Yeah.
and having empathy for people that don't know that information and instead exhibiting it and being a sunshine, like a bright sunshine for people
Yeah.
to look at and go, what are they doing? And to be genuinely curious,
Yeah.
because that's very different. If you're exuding that and you're happy and you're joyful and you love everyone and you genuinely have empathy and love for other people and wishing that they knew this information without trying to come from a place of ego that you're smarter and better and they are just stupid, it's going to reverberate very differently and people are going to approach you very differently, because if you're just judging them and you have this dark cloud energy over you and you're like scowling at the ground and scowling at the people like, you murderer, don't you know it? They're not going to want to talk to you. And if they do, probably what you say is going to actually end up butting heads, and push them away, right? So yeah, I mean, and I think that's just take some time and going through. There's a lot of reasons why people do that, and they might be judging themselves. They judging their past actions. They can't go to forgiveness because they just think everyone's where they're at mentally, and like, how could you think that? It's like, well, you're in a different place from your entire life. Like I used to growl at my sister when she went vegetarian, and I thought she was an idiot. Like I'd like make T-Rex noises. I thought she was stupid, and here I am now. So everyone's on their path, and having that wider view and that compassion and love in your heart goes a long way to their health, seeing more of this proliferate, and to your own health and your wellness.
Yeah, and the next question is, what is your view on supervised water fasting? Like personally myself, I've done it twice,
Mhm.
but I do if I had to coach people, I wouldn't um, recommend them to water fast um, unless they have a chronic disease and they really need it. But I will make sure that they already have a super healthy relationship with food before water fasting, for example, for 21 days. Like I wouldn't advise someone that has been doing this lifestyle for maybe 3 months and they want to water fast for 40 days. That's too
Yeah.
much.
No, I'm in alignment with you on that as well. It's kind of the same with like say the juice feasting kind of thing. It's like if we're coming from a stance of like everyone needs to do this in order to be healthy and you must start with a fast or a juice fast and
Mm.
yeah, no, I think a much more sound approach is to become consistent, proficient, and knowledgeable about the lifestyle and put that into place and form a base with that. And yeah, I agree. Like if someone is in a really intense situation, maybe it's appropriate, right? Like there are cases, again, I don't want to be black and white, but for the absolute most part, establishing that lifestyle, building up your health by bringing in more, because people aren't coming into this diet with nutritional abundance and then to all of a sudden go to complete avoidance of all nutrition is not really the best route. So bringing those stores up, coming into nutritional abundance through learning the lifestyle, applying it, and growing in health in that way, to me is the most sound. And if they have a chronic ailment or they have a condition that after a year or 2 years, arbitrary numbers that are going to be interdependent upon the situation and individual, we'll just say 1 or 2 years. If they still have a lingering chronic issue, well, yeah, maybe that's a time to look into a supervised water fast. And I do emphasize supervised, with
Mm.
a knowledgeable practitioner that isn't making claims that you have to do it X, Y, and Z and remove all your mucoid plaque, those kinds of things. I think it definitely can have its time and place. It can be absolutely miraculous and life changing when indicated and applied properly. But at the same time, it can be devastating when not applied properly. I've seen people who are, water fasting for too long, and then again, they have really a tough time rebuilding their digestion, and even years later can't digest fats the same way they used to, or become mentally, emotionally addicted to it, kind of similar to like we talked about with the juice fasting, and they all of a sudden they feel like they just want to be a breatharian and stuff like that. So um, yeah, I think it definitely can have its time and place, but I'm much in alignment with you that focusing on lifestyle is the most sound, streamlined approach that offers the most advantages, and then to go from there. And one last thing I'll mention there too, I like to try and eat and live in such a way where fasting isn't required, and my favorite form of fasting is not intellectual fasting. And by that, I mean like people think like, oh, I have an issue, so I'm going to take a fast, and like, the day comes for the fast and their body doesn't necessarily want to fast, but like, well, this is the day I start fasting, so I'm going to fast, like, um, I like body initiated fasting, meaning if you're in a time where you've overstressed yourself out physically, mentally, emotionally, whether that's through food or emotions or you've run yourself ragged from too little sleep and over exercise and under recovery, your body might come into a state where food isn't appealing, where it genuinely is like, I'm looking at all this ripe stuff, but it really isn't appealing at all. Well, that's a body initiated call to take a break. And that might be for one meal, that might be for one day. It's seldom more than that, in most cases. And those very short term body initiated fasts, I personally feel more in alignment with, again, unless it's a very extreme circumstance or chronic condition, stuff like that, So that's kind of my view on fasting.
Yeah. And how will you advise someone, for example, who believes that all fats are mucus forming? Um, I used to believe that, like I used to avoid avocado as much as possible,
Hmm.
and then I found myself sometime. Okay, I will not have avocado for like 3 weeks, and I will want to have one, and then I will buy three and eat all three.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we can become obsessed about a great number of things that are healthy for us, and when we learn this information, it can be just like mind blowing and just
Mm.
like, oh my God, and we want to go down the rabbit hole, and we're more prone to extremes and extremism with it. And I often think and say that I do believe very often we almost need to obsess in order to learn enough to let go and come into a more calm balance. And to me, a lot of people are mucus obsessed. You know, they're like afraid of mucus and think that we need to remove all mucus and any mucus is bad mucus, you know? It's like that's couldn't be further from the truth. Like, yes, we don't want excessive mucus production, you know, that's not really advantageous. But every cell lining our digestive tract produce mucus. And it's for a reason. It's a transport mechanism. It also helps buffer the digestive tract so we're not going through those cells faster than necessary because it's a a enzymatic rich environment, like with protein digesting enzymes and hydrochloric acid and all this kind of stuff, right? So I, these things to me are just obsessions that go to the point of not being beneficial anymore, right? um, we have need for essential fatty acids. And yes, we can get enough without them if we really take care to eat enough really ripe tropical fruit and an abundance of greens. We can get there, but most people find it not only advantageous in terms of getting their caloric density, but advantageous in terms of getting certain nutrition and minerals and vitamins that aren't as rich or compounds that aren't as rich in fruits and greens that are in some seeds and fatty foods. Um, and most people enjoy the texture and the flavors, and it can actually boost the absorption of certain nutrients as well to include some fats in our diet. So I don't recommend a no-fat diet for a short period of time to streamline digestion or feel extra peppy. Yeah, that can be a short-term thing, but it's been incredibly rare the case. Like I actually don't know anyone who has completely got rid of all overt fats and done well for years and years and years on end. If there is an individual, it's the exception. And way more often when I see people avoiding overt fats at all costs because they cause mucus or because they think that fat is bad and all fat is bad, end up running invariably into weight issues, skin issues, hair issues, mood issues. So it's something to me that kind of comes back to just going a little bit too far with obsession from a misconception and not really being grounded in long-term experience or nutritional science. So um, yeah, I'm not afraid of avocados, and I know some people would say, well, hemp and chia and flax are better. Sorry, actually, just hemp and flax, or sorry, well, just hemp and chia are better, and avocados are the devil, and you shouldn't eat them. And it's like, hey, you know what? If you feel better just eating hemp and chia and a well-rounded raw food diet, power to you. But if you enjoy avocados, they can be a part of a very healthy raw food diet, and I'm not concerned about them whatsoever personally. Again, in the concept of a low-fat, varied raw food diet. I personally wouldn't make avocados the only fat I eat, and some people go that way too. They think that all nuts and seeds are too heavy and we shouldn't eat them. I should only eat fatty fruits. And the fatty fruits aren't typically balanced in the omega profile that is optimal for us for long-term brain health or nerve conductivity or a whole host of hormonal issues. So, yeah, I think that some level of nuts and seeds and avocado is great. We can overdo them, but it's super simple. It's like for most people, a handful or two of nuts and seeds in a day or every other day is great. That's more than enough. Half an avocado to an avocado when you feel like it is great. And if you go overboard and have a couple, oh my gosh, you failed. No, you didn't. It's just,
No.
it's fine. It's nothing to really worry about. It's just what you do most of the time that has the most pronounced effect.
Yeah, I do remember. I do remember last year I had too much coconut meat, and I noticed like when I went back to Australia and started eating flaxseed, like I just noticed like how my body reacted to that, like
Yeah.
to balancing the omegas again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I've overdone fat and just felt more lethargic and tired and less appreciative of sweet fruit and then undereat sweet fruit and then you want to eat more fat and it creates a yo-yo self-fulfilling prophecy. But I apologize, you had more to say.
I can see you now. Do you
Oh,
still see me here?
yeah, I see you there and I see me still. So hopefully everyone
Okay.
can.
Yeah, that's good. Um, Yeah, I had. Yeah, how will you advise someone who feels stuck into the cleansing rabbit hole and would like to start having a healthy relationship with food again?
Ooh. Well, I mean, it is individual and personal. I mean, and it depends on who it is, where they're at, and why they're doing it, right?
Mm.
If someone's coming from a place of like a major degenerative disease or like cancer or something, that's going to be a little bit different than somebody who has self-image and issues with themselves in terms of how they feel about themselves and life and their emotional state, right? So it's gonna depend on that, and talking about that and figuring that aspect out and getting them to dig deep on what their motivations and reasoning behind it are, and seeing if that's true. Really, like, is that really true? And sharing different perspectives and views to see if any of those connect can be a good starting point, you know? Um, from there, oftentimes it very simply takes running the experiment and starting to include more fresh, ripe, raw, whole foods, and noticing the shifts that they feel, and bringing clarity to the misconceptions that maybe they've fallen victim for, and supporting them in that, and letting them know that it is a bit of a process, but you know through eating these foods, especially through eating them in a calm, balanced state, not trying to use them to sidetrack emotions, really helps form a more balanced, loving relationship with food and with yourself. Because it is food made man, or it's love made manifest. Again, like Mother Nature's love. The more we bring that into our bodies, the more love we can't help but experience. So yeah, I apologize if it's not more, but it is kind of an individual thing. I think that it depends upon where someone's coming at, and that could be a whole hour in of itself.
Yeah, and also this takes me to, I remember when I was stuck into this cleansing, and then from one day to another, I decided I want to start exercising, and I want to start eating more. And the first thing I did was just taking a break from social media, and
Hmm.
just I read the 80-10-10, and I just focused on that. And that,
That's good.
yeah, and that was what helped me to come back and to realize how important it is to feel that I'm nourishing my body instead of seeing the body as something that has to be detox, you know.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's a very, very good point. Just, guidance, support, good information, nature, and abundance, and just exploring that and enjoying that, and feeling the benefits that come from that only accumulate. So absolutely agree.
Yeah. But I'm very grateful for this conversation, Chris. Thank you so much for being part. It has been super, super fun.
Such a pleasure, and thanks for the intense questions and the hot topics. Some of them we cover in my book that's a part of the bundle, and others, some of this is the first time I've said some of this, which I'm really grateful for. And I think this information needs to get out there more and more and more. And I hope a lot of people see it and find benefit from it. And I'm always open to talk as well. So, yeah, I just thank you so much.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone who has been watching. And remember, the bundle is until tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow midnight, and it's just like $50 for so much information, courses, recipes. Is worth is worth, and it's a blessing in the journey to have so many books and so much inspiration. So you can find the link in Chris' bio or my bio, and let's do it.
Yep, yep. I appreciate that a ton, absolutely. And I can only imagine if I would have had information like this, a bundle like this when I first started the raw food diet, I think it would have streamlined my results even more. So I feel so blessed to be a part of it. I'm stoked you're a part of it. And, everyone coming to experience and, their gifts and have changed them and help them, and tasty stuff. It can really make a big difference in people's lives. So thanks again,
Yeah.
Omaira.
Thanks, Chris. Bye.
See you, everyone. Have a good one.